Hi, it's Jane, and this is the new object of Ronan's affection. Just a little fluff ball. Cat is nuts. I'm telling you. He's got a mouse over there off to the side, but no, he wants to play with that right now. I am going to continue crocheting today as we sit and talk. I am working on this Afghan. Yesterday, my stitch marker is on this side, so I'm going to add it over here. I was sick, so I didn't go to church. And since I was sick, let me get this stupid thing. Toss it one more time for her. And since I was sick, I didn't go to church. And I stayed home, and after I watched my church service, I went looking for the Charlie Kirk Memorial. All of the network channels, some of them were carrying it, but the problem was you had all these newscasters yapping. I could see that there was music on stage, so I thought, okay, where can I actually watch it? Well, I started watching it live on TikTok, and all the lefties did everything they could, and most of those lives were taken down. So then I thought, okay, where am I going to be able to watch it? Because I would like to watch the whole thing. Not just the actual memorial ceremony that was scheduled to start 2 p.m. my time in Pennsylvania, Central Standard Time. And this was about 10:30. So I finally figured out that, maybe YouTube will just carry it live without a lot of interruptions and things. So I went looking for it, and you could watch it on a couple of different channels that I watch, but I thought I'm going to go to Turning Point USA and see if they are live streaming it. And they were. So I watched it in its entirety on Turning Point USA YouTube channel. And was a great afternoon of praise and worshiping God, and it's everything I expected it to be. I do find it sad that so many of our cabinet people, and including Erica Kirk, had to stand behind bulletproof glass. That kind of shows you the level of hate in this country, and it's sad. I mean, it wasn't just a podium with just a bulletproof shield around the head. It completely enclosed them, 3 sides. Well, that's not complete. But I found that part was disturbing, but I understand it completely. But I know I had a couple of friends who attended the memorial. They flew out there. Part of their vacation, one of their vacation plans was to go out and hike a certain area in Arizona, and it happened to be nearby. So when they found out the memorial was going to happen, they chose to fly out for that week and a half. They were out there to go by Turning Point USA, see the memorial that was out there, but also to attend the memorial service. Now, what she had talked about was that the lines to get in, it was 5 to 6 hours in line. They were told previously before that they needed to bring food, drink, any kind of thing they might need while they were standing in line. They were also told that there would be no bags, no strollers, no wagons, nothing that they could take into the stadium for safety reasons, which is understandable. Now, she said while they were out there, and she had asked one of the police officers, why no trash cans? Because all these people had brought food, water, things like that. Babies that were there had to have diapers changed, and there were no trash cans breathing in. And the police basically told her it would be impossible to keep some crazed person from planting bombs, IED, or God knows what in these trash cans. So they chose not to have trash cans on purpose. They'd already pre-made arrangements so that once everyone was in the stadium, that then the people who were on the garbage detail would come through, pick up all the trash. They were given the location of where they could pick up their strollers, wagons, anything that they might have used in there. The only exception were walkers and wheelchairs. Those were allowed. But, and while they were inside the stadium, she said, you know, walking up to get into it, you could see the different piles of trash here and there because people had no place to put it, so they'd put it in a bag and, you know, set it at the side of the curb or whatever. But she said when they were leaving the stadium, it was completely cleaned up. Even the protesters that were there with their signs. And thankfully, very few of those people showed up. I think someone documented that maybe there was a group of 8 or 10, and they were pretty obnoxious. There was one account where, and there was a video of it, of a woman walking in towards the entrance. One of the protesters yelling at her, she was pregnant, I hope your baby dies. Got to be a pretty sick individual to do that. So I don't know. Which got her upset. Of course, being pregnant, hormones raging, it would upset you. Of course, a few people took umbrage with it and asked them what the F was their problem. What the F was wrong with them or something like that. But, yeah. But, like I said, the whole thing I felt was very therapeutic. It was a lot of praising God, worshiping God. Memorial part, a lot of people referred to the gospel and how Charlie lived out that gospel and, you know, told different stories. There was an altar call that was given. And I will tell you, since then, I have seen a ton of left liberals, the woke crowd, spewing all kinds of lies and all kinds of divisiveness about what was happening there. So, which just shows me the type of people they are. Extremely hateful, violent, volatile. So, there's that. But to me, it was a very uplifting memorial. And I saw a video where someone was, you know, complaining about Trump and everything and all that he'd said. Well, did he stay completely focused on track? No, but that's Trump. He never does on anything. But I did find it refreshing that he was very open about hating his opponents. Even though Charlie would tell him, no, we don't, we love, all this. And he would say, I would tell him, no, I hate them. I hate my opponents. I don't want what's best for them. And he even said, I'm sure Charlie's looking down and frowning at me or shaking his head or something. I can't remember exactly. He basically said, maybe someday I'll be more like Erica. So, and you're going to see a lot of that. People taking all of these different things out of context, which is normal. We're used to that, right? We see that all the time. Right, left, and everything in between. So, saw a video today that I thought was kind of funny. And it was talking about the whole thing with the sale of TikTok. That I guess, was it 6 days ago? 5 or 6 days ago. Trump had made mention of, can't think of his name. Is it Michael Bell? Rupert Murdoch? Ellison? That were in the group of people that were looking to purchase TikTok. Oracle, which is owned by Ellison, would still be in a major, one of the big service vendors and those kind of things with it, and would have the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. But then this person went on to say that you would have to download a new TikTok app. You wouldn't be able to use the current TikTok app because it was now being made and being renamed. Would be the American version, would be called MAGA Talk. Instead of your For You page, it would be Freedom For You page. And then he went on to say that Trump was going to approve each and every one of your TikToks or your videos. And I'm sorry, folks, I had to laugh at that. Can we say total misinformation? Probably. Some of it might be true. The thing about Ellison, Murdoch, and other investors, yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. So, I don't know. Should be interesting whatever happens. I think he did extend the ban, through executive order. I think I read somewhere until December the 16th for the deal to go through. Of course, you got to wait on Xi Jinping to do his little thing and determine whether it was going to be okay or not. So, I don't know. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. Right? And then I'll tell you, last night my son, one of my sons, sent me a picture from Target website of men's underwear. And underneath it he sent the message, "This is Trump's America." And, my response back to him was, underwear? He goes, yeah, the cost of it's ridiculous. This is because of tariffs. I said, so what is the manufacturing date on that underwear? He said, I don't know. I said, well, that might affect whether that price is reflective of actual tariffs or not. Why don't you know? Then he went off on something about, well, he's all against the immigrants because Americans don't want to do those kind of jobs in factories. I'm like, okay. Why? Because they don't want to work for the wages that these factory workers are paying the immigrants, which is lower than what they would pay someone in America? Is that why Americans won't take those jobs? Because last time I heard, every ICE raid that's happened at different manufacturers, Americans have been just running, applying for those jobs. Because they know they have to do the standard of American wages. I said, so how come this isn't corporate greed? How many billions of dollars does Target make? Could Target afford keeping the cost $3 less because of tariffs? I said, those are the kind of things I wonder. Why is it now not corporate greed, and why is it now tariffs? And then I asked him, do you actually know what the tariff on Vietnam is? Because these underwear come from Vietnam. He said, no, I don't. I said, how come you don't? What were the tariffs in 2022? I don't know. How come you don't know? Because it didn't matter then. They weren't being passed on. I said, oh, that's what you think. So you're upset that Vietnam is going to, instead of making $39 billion off of garment clothing that they send in, they're only going to make $30 billion because they have to pay for those tariffs. No, I'm mad because the cost is getting spread to us. Oh, okay. Well, why is that? Why can't Target eat the $3 profit when they have such a huge monopoly and they have such a huge profit margin? Why can't they eat that? He just kind of shut up. Well, and here we are ignoring genocide. So what the hell does that have to do with anything? He didn't have an answer. But then we got to talking about the actual rate, Vietnam's tariffs. The tariffs previous in the year 2022 were 18% to 28% on clothing, depending on the type of clothing. That has gone here in the U.S. starting August. It is now 20% of garments that are shipped directly from Vietnam to the U.S. However, if they do what's called transshipments, that tariff rate goes up to 40% on those items. And I said to him, do you know what transshipments are? And he said, no. I said, well, go look it up. He went and looked it up, and then we talked about that a little bit. He goes, I never thought of it about that way. I said, well, you really have to think about it. Transshipment shipping is when you use an intermediate country to disguise the origin of where it's actually coming from. Not only that, but it's also often used to avoid duties or tariffs on those items. So Vietnam ships their things to Cambodia, or maybe even to South Korea or to China to ship those in, because maybe their tariff rate's a little bit better. So if you get caught doing that, then your tariff rates get increased to 40%. And they should be. You're lying. You know? And then I'd asked him, I said, now you brought up genocide. Do you know what it means? I mean, you throw a lot of these terms around like they're nothing. Well, yeah, I'm thinking about the Palestinian children. I said, okay. What about the children in Africa? Or the people in Africa? What about those people that live in, I don't know, Turkey? Anywhere in the world that has genocide. What does genocide mean? And he said, well, we need to fix it. And I said, so how are you doing that? He said, well, I'm protesting it. I said, well, son, I'm sorry. Protesting, I think, is a waste of breath. Does it bring light to the object? Yeah, maybe if you do it once or twice. But if you keep doing it over and over and you're showing an ugly side, yelling, screaming at people, not coming up with solutions to stop it, where does it go from there? Then I asked him, he goes, well, America could stop the genocide. And then I said, how? How are they going to stop that? Genocide is hate. It's hate for another person's culture, their race, their religion, whatever. They want to do away with you, wipe you out. So how is the Palestinians' thirst for genocide against Jews okay? How do you stop the hate? And you can't just do it by opening up a wallet. I realize countries around the world think America is an open wallet. But that's not how you solve genocides. It isn't. You have to change their hearts and their minds. And how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you change your heart and mind when you're busy screaming at somebody who doesn't believe the same thing you do? And you're doing it out of anger. How does that person normally respond to you? Do they turn away? Do they walk away? Do they go away mad? Or do they sit down and have that discussion with you and try to resolve this peaceably? So, and what I find interesting is he has always had this opinion that regardless of what you do, if you think conservatively, you're in the wrong. And I said to him, so why are you bitching at me about the prices if I'm wrong? Why aren't you bitching to the Trump administration? All these countries have the opportunity to come to the table and to work out an agreement for their trade. That's it. Apparently, this is what they felt was fair. And I reminded him, North Carolina used to be a big textile conglomerate and leader in the world. And a lot of those companies went overseas. And they went overseas because they could pay workers less. They didn't have to provide them with some of the safety features. Secondly, they didn't have to worry about if their processes were polluting the earth due to our EPA standards that are so tight, that a spider couldn't get through the web. Just a lot of those things. But most especially so they don't have to pay the wages that they paid Americans. So they could keep more of the profit. They could profit more. Corporate greed. He goes, well, you wouldn't understand that about that kind of thing. I said, oh, really? You forget I worked for Levi Strauss when you were a baby. And Levi Strauss chose to move to Mexico because they could pay the workers less. They didn't have to provide some of the safety measures put into place. There were a lot of reasons they left. One of the other reasons was because the city where they were at that point had decided not to give them the huge tax break, had decided to raise it just a little bit, to where they paid a little bit more in taxes. Instead of charging a fee to every person who worked in the city, like they do here in Lock Haven. You have to pay a fee for working in Lock Haven. And here's the funny thing. If you have 2-3 jobs in Lock Haven, you get to pay that 3 times. Not just once, 3 times. If you have 3 different jobs. So I don't know. Anyway, the kid went away mad. Took his ball and went home. Say that figuratively. And just stopped talking. Which is exactly what I expect of him. Because that's his usual route. If he can't have an answer, can't look it up, can't find out, and basically I've just challenged him to look into it. And to look into the actual manufacturing date of that item. Most cases you can find the manufacturing date on every item that you purchase, either hidden in the UPC code or somewhere on the actual packaging. And many times, a lot of those items that he's pissing and moaning about were manufactured years earlier, or a year earlier, and just hit the shelves. So, I don't know. Hopefully maybe he'll stop and think about it. Look a little more closely into that. But I do think it's interesting. He seems to think that we turn a blind eye to genocide. I really don't think that we do turn a blind eye to genocide. But I also think that we don't have any answers to stop it. You can create a peace treaty between groups of people, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stick to it. Doesn't change a bit of their opinions or the hate in their heart at all. Did you see the MSNBC interview with Jasmine Crockett and the little panel. I want to say it was with Joy Reid, but it wasn't Joy Reid. Thinking of who it was with. But basically, the MSNBC person, they were talking about it's a war between Democrats and Republicans. They were all talking about the need to take up arms, find weapons, fight this war. I'm going to say this, and this is something I have truly believed for a long time, probably since I was in high school. The party of violence, fear, and destruction has always been the Democrat Party. When you look at their creation of the KKK and all the tactics that they have used throughout the years, they're just as guilty when it comes to violence. In fact, probably more guilty of calling for violence, screaming out for violence, and just generally misbehaving. So, but I've believed that for a long time. And to this day, they haven't proved anything different. Still calling for violence. And of course, their behavior says it all many times. And I'm sorry. I think any time you protest a funeral or a memorial service, there is something very wrong with you as a person. And yeah, I'm being judgmental. I think that you harbor a lot of hate and anger in your heart. And I think it's self-destructive. And really, my wish for you is that you would learn from it and try to be less destructive to yourself. People are nuts these days. Just nuts. Along with my cats, the nuts. Vernon is sitting there staring at the window. Got a couple of butterflies flying around. Coming close to the door, and his little ears are perked up. He's like, come on in. Let me chase you. But yeah, I don't think there are easy answers for dealing with some of these things. Somehow people think that it is an easy answer, but I really don't think it is. It used to be, and I'll tell you, a long time ago I used to watch Candace Owen. And then she kind of went weird. And there's something that I'd noticed about her. And I'm going to say this. It's something I noticed because I enjoy watching TikTok videos, laughing, enjoying the dances and the cat videos, dog videos, you name it. Fainting goat videos, all that kind of stuff. But I've also seen a lot of things that kind of make you go, really? Really? What's going on with your head these days? But I do find it rather interesting. With Candace Owens, she's been going down this rabbit hole saying she's trying to solve Charlie's murder. And she's basically trying to say that the Holy Land person in charge of the Holy Land was behind it. Do I think she's gone off the deep end? Yeah, I do. But here's the thing. It seemed like within an hour of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, there were a lot of these shops on TikTok that were selling Freedom t-shirts, Charlie Kirk on the back, birth and death date, that kind of thing. And a few of them said they were donating, 50% of the proceeds to Turning Point USA. But I think that Candace, and I'm going to lump her in with a lot of these, they're grifters, clout chasers. They'll do anything to make a buck off of anybody. And I can understand wanting to memorialize that man. If you had a t-shirt company, but maybe 100% of those profits go to Turning Point USA or charity that Charlie endorsed, or the homeless in your neighborhood. I don't know. But not keeping any of the profits off of it. I think that kind of shows that you're looking for blood money. And I think that's what Candace is doing. She's trying to make herself relevant and make a dime off all this kind of stuff. I might be wrong. She may be genuine. But I don't think so. To be honest, I don't think so. And I don't really think that she has the Kirk family's best interests at heart, which is sad to say. But I don't know. And this whole idea of people saying that he's not dead, he's been hidden away somewhere, all this kind of nonsense. There was no blood splatter. I'm so glad you all and all of them have a degree in forensics and understand blood splatter. Isn't it great to hear these kind of conspiracy theories? And speaking of conspiracy theories, oh my goodness. 3i Atlas disappeared for 17 minutes? 17 minutes yesterday. Completely disappeared from being monitored. Does that not give you woo-woo feelings? Glitch in the system? I don't know. Problem with the algorithm, the machines monitoring it? Whatever. A reset? Who knows? But I'm loving that whole theory. I can't help it. It's a conspiracy theorist in me. I love that kind of stuff. Oh, well. Next thing, and I saw where in my neighborhood, I live maybe 35 minutes away from Milton, Pennsylvania. But they are going to be putting up a statue in honor of Chef Boyardee. For those of you that don't know, Chef Boyardee was started here in Pennsylvania, in Milton, Pennsylvania. So I think that's thrilling. I really do. All right, guys, I think I've talked on long enough. My voice keeps going in and out. And I don't know if that's allergies or whatever bug that I had. So I'm just going to let you go. I hope you enjoyed this afternoon. I had a little fun talking about it. A little craziness in my life. All right, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.